Don Gwynn. I'm a paramedic. I currently teach full-time as a faculty member for the ACC Emergency Medical Services Professions Department. I hold the position as department chair. Started as an EMT or emergency medical technician. That is the first certification in EMS on the way up to being paramedic. It's a progression. So EMT teaches you the foundation of the medical field in general, and then I went on to become a paramedic, which is more aligned with like a nurse. It's just an environmental change. We practice outside of the hospital while a nurse practices inside of the hospital. So I did that for 20 years in the field on an ambulance before I stepped up into a full-time teaching role here at ACC. Typically 24-hour shifts. It depends on the system, but we start off a shift with the daily duties, which primarily would be to make sure everything is on the ambulance, to prepare ourselves for calls. From there, our responsibility is primarily to take care of those who are sick or injured acutely and treat them, assess them, and transport them to the hospital where they receive their definitive care. There are other responsibilities too. We generally educate the public about, ironically, about what to do not to need EMS, and then also what EMS is in general. The EMT certification, which you can't bypass, you have to become an EMT. You are certified to work on an ambulance, and that's probably the lowest paid. And on average, it could be anywhere from a volunteer basis on up to maybe $35,000 a year. Once you become a paramedic, it jumps up considerably, although it varies nationally depending on where you work. Here, it's a hotbed for EMS. We have a lot of recognition as to what we do, and you can make upwards of, I think the average pay is roughly $65,000 to $70,000 a year. The most I've ever heard of a paramedic working was roughly maybe $110,000. That is somebody with experience, with maybe extra education, who might have an associate's and or bachelor's degree in the field. And it also depends on the service, longevity. To get into the EMS field, all that's required is a high school diploma. When you get up into the paramedic, there are changes that we're seeing. It's shifting more towards, at the minimum, an associate's. This is to get into the EMS field. And there are bachelor's programs now that are increasing in number in the country. But with the national requirement right now, it's just the high school diploma, but it might move more towards the associates in the future. And also depends on where you work. The system may choose to hold you at a higher level of education. Maybe mandatory to work there, or maybe just to upgrade your pay scale. Your basic reading, writing, and math. Math also, yes, it's in the medical field, so you have to be prepared to do math, to do drug dosages and other calculations. But there are computer skills. We are moving into an area where we do our documentation of patient care electronically in a number of different venues. And then of course you have the technology that we use, cardiac monitors, the IV catheters. You have to be familiar with that. One of the most commonly used skills is simply socializing. You really get to learn to socialize, to talk to patients one-on-one in a very diverse platform nationally. The patients that you actually run into will vary a great deal in their personalities, their beliefs, and you get to really learn how to talk one-on-one with these patients. Once you take the class for EMT, you get certified at the national level, possibly state level as well. And then once you go on to the paramedic level, you again have to be certified as a paramedic. But there are other certifications too, and there are card classes, what we call card classes, including, of course, CPR, advanced cardiac life support, pediatric advanced life support, pre-hospital trauma life support, You have a critical care paramedic class. There are wilderness EMS classes that you can take. It depends on where you work, whether or not your systems will require these or will offer them to you. Or it may just be a situation, again, where they just may require it to bump you up into a certain pay. The rewarding aspect is actually the same as the challenging aspect, really, because you're going to learn to treat patients in their most critical period of their lives, or at least as perceived by them. So these patients will be calling you, in some cases, in imminent fear of death or substantial injury. So you need to be prepared to treat those patients as rapidly as possible, as compassionately as possible, and knowing that you can get them to definitive care and improve their overall quality of life or even save their life. That is very rewarding in itself. Again, that's the challenging part too, because you really have to learn to think at the moment to be able to do this. Assess your patient, find out what's wrong with the patient, treat them appropriately, transport them, and communicate those findings to the hospital for continuation of care. So again, that's the most rewarding and at the same time the most challenging. It can be very intimidating, but again, rewarding. First off, you got to be willing to listen to a very diverse population of people. As I alluded to earlier, the people you're going to be running into are from various socioeconomic backgrounds. They've got different religious beliefs, political beliefs. This is, again, that's one of those rewarding aspects because you learn so much from these people, but you have to be willing to listen to them despite your beliefs. You're there for them and not for you. So one of the things you learn to do in this field is talk to patients, talk to people in general. It's a life skill that you learn even outside of the field of EMS that has benefited most paramedics throughout their lives, whether they remain in the field throughout their entire life or just be in the field for a couple of years. So you got to be really empathetic to your patients, to these people of varying degrees of diversity. The Austin area is a very good place to be a paramedic or be an EMS professional. They allow such things as research to improve the overall quality of care. The pay structure is very competitive in this area. And yeah, the takeaway is research where you want to go first and what their EMS systems are like. There are systems such as the ones in this area, Austin, Travis County, Williamson County, that recognize people with higher degrees of education, associate's degrees versus bachelor's degrees. They may or may not require those, but they recognize the importance, so it makes you much more marketable. So they will find ways to, if they don't put you through the training directly, find ways to help assist you in continuing your education. 90s, EMS has been one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing aspect of the medical field. That's when all the research showed the efficacy of EMS and what it's done to pre-hospital care, to patients in need of immediate medical attention. So that makes it very rewarding in that we see this growth, the recognition, the hospital environment. The ER physicians truly recognize what EMS does for the patient. So with that continued growth, it's very exciting, not just where we are right now, but to see where we're going to be in another 10 years.